Hey, everybody. It's the Meet Me in the Middle podcast. It's a beautiful Friday morning. How are you doing today, Justin?
Pretty good, pretty good. Went out to a concert last night and stuff like that, and came back, so it was good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I just
How you
got
doing?
back from New York last weekend.
Yeah. Kind of
That
know.
was very fun.
What were you doing there again?
Uh, it was the wife's birthday. We saw Hamilton on Broadway, and then we saw the Book of Mormon the next day.
Okay.
And then she did a Peloton class with her favorite instructor on Saturday morning before we left. And then we jam packed a ton of everything. It was a very quick trip. We flew out on Wednesday morning and we flew back on Saturday evening.
Well, yeah.
So short trip in New York, but we absolutely packed it in. It was great.
I haven't been to DC, Philadelphia, and stuff like that. I haven't made it up to New York yet.
Do you know anything about Book of Mormon?
No.
So the South Park guys, they're always pushing the boundaries of
Someone
freedom
asked.
of freedom of speech, right? Like parody and making fun of people and kind of like using their likeness, in certain things.
Yeah.
This was wild, like absolutely wild. Like that, there were parts of it that I started to question. I was like, is this like this is really pushing the envelope of like, is this racist? Like, no, like, no, it can't be. Like, there's a whole like half of the cast is African American, half of the cast is like looks like Mormon missionaries. Like, it's a very binary type of cast. There's really not a lot in between. And
Okay, this is
uh
gonna be a weird question, but are the black cast members playing black cast members, or are they like
yeah, yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I mean, with
They're playing
With
Africans,
okay, because with like
like in
appropriation and
Africa.
everywhere else, you could have black actors, but they could not be portraying like
No. It's just with with everything with South Park. I mean, like, it's one of the reasons why we love South Park is just because they push boundaries. They're continually like saying like, yeah, we can get right up to the line,
well, that's
you know.
comedy. Comedy has always been that way. Comedians will always find the line and then a little bit over it.
Well, watching them like behind the scenes, like recording stuff, and him doing like the city walk, like the Chinese food guy, and then they were doing like the difference between like Chinese food and like between China and Japan, like so razor thin on the line of like, oh, that's not like, almost like doing yellow face.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, there's that fine line between racism and stereotypical. And if you're being
yeah,
super stereotypical, which means you're, usually about 80% right in what you're saying, but it's very, very specific.
it's pretty wild. Yeah. At one point, one of the missionaries is uh like miming a blowjob on Hitler.
Okay. Missing so much context, but yeah, okay.
You don't need it. That's the thing. It's like it's just
I have so many questions though.
we didn't listen to any of the songs. We didn't like look into it. I just knew that it was the South Park guys. Everybody said that it was really funny. So we went in cold and we had a really good seat, like in the little booths on the side of the stage, not like in the
Oh, okay.
crowd.
Yeah, yeah. The
So
link, the
we're
link, the Lincoln
the
seats.
Lincoln kind of thing, yeah. And it's like two seats per little stair thing going up. So it's just Melissa and I.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. And it was great. We were just like dying laughing. And it really was like the yin and yang of like Hamilton being so serious and so epic and just like so serious and it was great. And seeing that show the next night was like comic relief. It was a much smaller theater, but Hamilton's amazing. That's a wild, wild production.
I've
Uh,
never. I don't think I've ever been to like an actual play. I think the closest thing was like seeing Letterkenny when we went, and that kind of.
that's a stage show, yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't seen like an actual play. I guess.
No, I think that Letterkenny could fall into like slightly in that area of like a stage production type of thing. They had a set, they ran through scenes. Yeah, that Letterkenny night was
That was
amazing.
that was a that was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. There's a video on my phone of us doing the hand grenades, or like the sort of hand grenades that we figured out at that bar. I was flipping through my phone, and Melissa was like, "Oh, it's so weird to see like a video of you drinking,"
Sure.
because she's never seen me drink. She's like, "Oh, that's so weird to like." There was a picture of me at a wedding right before we met, and I had a glass of champagne in my hand, and she's like, "Whoa, it's strange to see like knowing that you did drink alcohol at one point." She's never known me to drink alcohol.
Yeah. No, yeah, she's definitely on the other side of that.
She's also never. I've never gone into work like
Oh yeah,
on a
sure.
regular basis. When we met, I was working remote
Yeah, and
from the
before
house,
you
and then now
getting
from
all the
here.
way into like downtown LA, it's like 2
Yeah,
to 3 hours of your entire day just driving in and driving back.
yeah. I was gone 60 hours a week when I was at the office.
Yeah. No, yeah.
65 if you count when we'd go out on Thursdays.
Yeah, we'll only say those are amounted to 5 hours.
Yeah, yeah. But you wanted to talk about freedom of speech. What you have in mind?
I mean, I think a lot of this stuff's been coming to a head for a while now.
Okay.
The whole the whole Charlie Kirk thing is obviously going to be a spearhead of it because he went out there and exercised it constantly, right? And then it was his freedom of speech and what he said and everything else that kind of, sort of brought about the situation that we have and kind of how the extremes on both sides exercise that free speech too. It's not so much, let's say Charlie Kirk's angle, right? And then you have the other side that continually throws around uh calling people Hitler on the other side and doing those kind of things, which is completely it's just extremely unhelpful too. So you have these people that are exercising the limits of that free speech, expecting zero consequence to come from the stuff that you say. And then it pushes into social media and people thinking that, oh, I can say whatever I want. And it's like, yeah, did you not read the terms and conditions of the private company that puts that out there? Just
Yeah.
because you're an American, and I think that's another thing that I'd bring up later, is that I think that um, us living here in America and everything else, we have a certain level of rights and freedoms that living here gives us, and I think that we think we carry those in every forum we go to, and we don't. And if you actually read, you know, your rights and everything else, the freedom of speech, all it says is that the government cannot persecute you for talking. It does not say anything about the social aspect of talking and the consequences that come from talking or private enterprise. It does not say that. It just says the government cannot restrict your speech. And I think that everyone doesn't listen to that back half. That, oh, freedom of speech. Yeah, well, no, there are parameters. We already know there are parameters for that. So it's like, again, I have this feeling that we're so used to living in the world we're living in, and we think it translates to everything. And I just flat out don't believe that it translates to everything. There are limits. And, it's there are a bunch of, like, again, the easy ones are bombing an airplane, fire in a theater. There are certain things that incite certain levels of panic or violence that we know we can't say those things. You know, there have been cases, freedom of speech cases, where people have said stuff, burning flags and everything else. There are rulings on all of this stuff that limit certain things. And then there are social things. I mean, one thing would be white people using the N word. Kind of anybody these days derogatorily using the N word. You're not supposed to say it, but there's no one's going to infringe upon it. But we know that there are certain things, or if we're around certain groups of people, children or whatever else, we limit our speech. So there are certain things. It's just, I think the space that we're living in now, with, I think, words are extrapolated, and they're, I think the use of the word trauma is drastically overused and meant to encompass all things you don't like that made you a little bit anxious or feel a little bad. So I think that the dramatization of words and, all the things that we say, it just they've hit a point where, you know, you have to realize there are limits on things. And again, just because the government cannot take action against you doesn't mean the rest of the population and the rest of the world or the private enterprise you might be working with doesn't have limits on that. But everybody just thinks, oh, well, you could say whatever. And it's like, obviously not, because of all these different things, Jimmy Kimmel. The dude was on camera working. He was working. He wasn't standing in the middle of the street preaching or saying something. He was working. And that company has a right to limit speech in the form at which they do. We can argue whether it was that bad to do it, and obviously it wasn't. Uh, but he was under employment talking about that. So I
But
just
this goes so
maybe
much.
completely wrong just saying that he is not a free person in public right of way where government could have an influence over him.
The government was, in fact, the who
Well, you're gonna say the strings
imposed
behind it.
that pressure.
You're gonna say the strings behind and whatever else, and that's fine. That's only one example of the stuff that I said.
Yeah.
You know,
So I mean, I agree with you that yes, he's working, and the people that he works for have every right to
because you tailor
monitor.
you tailor your speech if you're talking to work colleagues and if you're on a work meeting and everything else. Why? You're not completely free in that speech, are you? Who is completely free at work to say anything they want at
Correct,
anything they want?
but I mean, ABC and Disney more generally, they have there are sections of the Disney spider web, like Jimmy Kimmel, the thing about the Deadpool can have extremely crude humor and have make commentary. The Avengers movies didn't have a lot of risque, vulgar type of stuff the way that Deadpool did, and
Well,
there
firstly,
are
characters are written drastically different. Deadpool is a whole other character.
right. But you think about the Guardians of the Galaxy was like one of the only movies that fit into that Avenger or the MCU where she's like trying to open the door and he's just like pull wait until I unlock the door and then pull the fucking handle or like open the fucking door, like he says the F word in Guardians, and it's like one of the only times you hear.
Well, PG-13 gets one F-bomb.
But they don't use them, like, and
Sometimes
but
they
like
do.
but these are Disney properties that are allowed to have a certain level of leeway.
Under guide
Kimmel
under
Kimmel
guidelines.
is one. Exactly. Kimmel is one that he does political commentary in his monologues very, like, most often. And what he said, I mean, they tried to say that it was about Charlie Kirk, but it wasn't. It was a very benign comment about the Trump administration or the right, conservative right, and that pressure from the FCC to, like, oh well, we're gonna this is gonna affect the ability for us to maintain your license, and they were putting pressure. That is government censorship. That's saying if you say any dissenting comment is we're gonna retaliate against you, like that is
Well,
a loss of freedom of speech.
no. I mean, he had been talking about the Trump administration pretty much since it began.
Right.
This was just firstly, you could have let the paint dry a little bit as far as that whole scenario. I mean, he's got to stay current, so I get it. And I didn't think that, I thought it was a setup to a different thing. I didn't think that it was definitely not what they were spinning it to be at all. Um, but the wound was pretty fresh, man. And that's not, again, it's not excusing it.
What wound are you talking about?
They're on the right side as far as when it happened and making a joke out of it and just
But
kind of
that
what
the
I'm
comment that he made was about the shooter, and he said they're trying everything they can to
make
you
sure
know
it's not one of them.
that it's not one of them, that that's not a Republican, that it's
And it
not.
wasn't about the shoot, and even that comment wasn't really about the shooter. It was about
No.
the far right
Yeah.
to do everything they can to
It
prove
was
the fact
about
he
the
wasn't one of them.
spin doctors of the GOP that are trying to, think about that. There was
Fine,
the
Democrats were spinning it to make sure it wasn't them either. They were both doing it.
yeah, Sure. I mean, the Utah governor that came out and said, you know, I was really hoping that it wasn't one of us. Like he was hoping that it was a person of color. He was hoping that it was a
Whoa.
person that was not in a average typical Utah resident. Like, and he said the quiet part out loud. You know, like that he was really hoping that it wasn't just, you know, if you took a lineup of white Mormon, you know, young men, that it wasn't one of them. And that in itself, it says so much about, like, they were hoping that they were going to have a pariah, that they were going to have public enemy number one, and the fact that it didn't fit into their narrative was a problem. And that's exactly what Kimmel was commenting on. They're doing everything they can to so that it, you know, to draw attention away from the fact that it wasn't the enemy. It wasn't the enemy that they've painted it out to be.
Well,
You
and they
know?
both, and again, they've both done it. The other side wanted, as soon as it came out, the etchings on the bullets and the partner that he had and everything. The other side, it came out and tried to say, "Oh, well, you know, he's from Utah, he must be Republican," and all this other kind of stuff. And he's a white guy, and it's like nobody wants to be nobody wants it to be them. You know, nobody wants it to be part of us, or we're the reason why it happened, and everything else. And it's like I don't think anybody at that point in time when it was happening, I don't think anybody was pointing fingers necessarily. We still didn't even know why. At the point we didn't know why, but everybody was so worried about the finger being pointed at them
Yeah,
that,
everybody wants
that
every well,
only
but
the
that's why the whole story about, you know, Al Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and, like, you know, the 9/11, like, we immediately focused on an enemy, on, like, that's who's responsible for it, and that allowed, I think, a lot of people. I mean, that was a, you know, long time ago. That it allowed people to have a common enemy, and there was some, like, solidarity there. And, like, I've heard people talk
closure.
about the best day, you know, in our recent history was, like, the day after 9/11, when like, it didn't matter what side you were on, everybody was an American that day, and we all, you know, we had this, like, common goal to make America strong, to be together, like patriotism and all this stuff. And it's
It's
like,
a
yeah,
raw,
no, I
raw
get that.
camaraderie thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but everybody wants to have someone, something, they want to focus their rage or their sadness or their strong feelings on something. Everybody wants to do that. You know, you get hit by a car, or, you know, you get in a car accident, you immediately want to say, well, no, it's your fault, you know. And you bump into someone, you know, your coffee spills, you're looking for someone to blame, and no one wants to blame themselves, and no one wants to admit that, it was kind of both of us, kind of thing. Like, everyone, we all
Accountability
want.
accountability is tough, man, and not
Yeah,
everybody can do it. And but you know what? A society without accountability, it's just a constant blame game and
sure,
narcissism and everything else. And as soon as you get out of humbling yourself with accountability, there's no progress in the latter. There's no progress in
sure.
I'm right and you're wrong. It's just that's nothing but tension and fighting and arguing. But you have a bunch of people now that just can't agree on basic reality that happens sometimes. It's always this is what happened, and then there's spin left or right, and it's just so. I mean, you know, again, as far as the freedom of speech thing, you shared one video with me way back when. I can't remember what it was. Wasn't it someone? It was a woman or something, and she on trial for saying something. You put it in our note and our as an example, and I can't remember. It was an Instagram reel, and I can't remember what it
Was it
was.
that lady at a, like, a city council meeting, saying that she was gonna, like, find their address and go after them? At, like, she
Oh,
thought that
she
she
said
was.
she was gonna, like, kill him or something like that,
Yeah,
or whatever else, and it's like, yeah, like,
she was
perfect
making
example.
idle threats to a government
Well,
official, and
perfect
it's like,
example
you
of, like, you
can't
can't
do
say
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same like, if you're, again, it's just if we can't get to the point where, again, your freedom of speech just exonerates you from saying whatever batshit crazy thing you wanna say.
Well, in the words of Ricky Bobby, I said with
What
all
the
due
hell?
respect.
And then you say something really fucking
You can't just say whatever you want. Well, no, I said with all due respect.
doesn't yeah. Oh, man. No, yeah, it's, and, that other there's that one, I think he's a comedian or he's a comedy writer or something like that, but in the UK, right? He had that post about, trans people, and the UK has really cracked down on not just freedom of speech when you're talking, but social media posts, where they'll regulate your social media posts, and then police will show up and say that you said something we didn't like, and I'm like, "That's" so he came back, got off the plane, and there were cops waiting for him, and they arrested him for a social media post. And, it's there's some people that think that the things that happen in the UK kind of like roll over here next. And I'm like, that's a real slippery slope when it gets to
So this is the
they're just
problem.
writing something on social media. So what are we talking about?
This is the problem though, is that these uh taking Kimmel off the air, or like pressuring the FCC, pressuring Disney to take Kimmel off the air. This is how it starts. This is how we slowly erode at our freedom of speech. We are one of the only countries in the world that has the level of freedom of speech that we do. And they're like both, like all parties involved are slowly chipping away at that. A lot of real left liberal, leaning people are uh, using that shield of freedom of speech that's making it more. I don't know. There's the other side is saying, well, look how far they're taking that, like they're like hiding behind it. Well, we can do the same thing. And so if everybody just keeps walling off and walling off and walling off, like when either side does remove, or gets a Supreme Court case through, and now it becomes precedent, laws can change with rulings, and it's going to take is a couple, one or two very key Supreme Court cases for there to be massive rollbacks of freedom of speech. And that's scary. It's like I feel like we are we're not like heading towards that. Like we are on the edge of that cliff. It really feels that way. And it's scary. And a lot of that is being orchestrated by not just the right and left here, but other, global political geopolitical pressures. You know, and it's scary. It just it's a scary time that we're in, because
I mean,
we're
I mean, I have worries and stuff like that, but I don't think I'm as worried just because our culture here, just the American culture in general, will only stand up for so much. And it's written in our constitution that we can repeal our government and we can like that was the whole point of a lot of the writings in our Bill of Rights and everything else is that we have the ability to hold the government accountable.
this
And
is the boiling frog effect, though.
there are more of us than there are of them for sure. And it's just a matter of if it ever got that bad, I don't have the lack of confidence in the American people to take stuff back if we have to. We've
I
proven
do.
that I don't.
That where
It's
this is the
I think
boiling
that's
frog
just
effect. This we're slowly getting up to a boil, and this is the like there have been so many examples over the course of history of things getting a little bit bad, and us saying like, oh well, it can't get any worse, and then it gets a little bit worse, it gets a little bit worse, and then we're in this authoritarian state. It's the We are headed that way. I know that, like, it's written in our constitution and all the amendments, that we have the power to repeal government and all this stuff, but that is slowly being chipped away. That is going to be less and less likely. And look, and just the fact that we are so polarized in this country, the what's happening over here, there's so much sleight of hand, and like, oh yeah, don't look over here, just all focus on what's going on over here. The shadow makers of this country, in that are really in power, the ones that are kind of orchestrating things, they love the fact that we're just infighting, that everyone's fighting each other. you know
I guess,
they're shaking up the ant farm and watching us fight.
sure. I I think until the day comes where we actually lose a ton of confidence in our voting, like where we really think that our votes are not being cast away, like if there actually is manipulation of our votes. Like right now, we kind of complain about a handful. We know that there's going to be a little bit of weird stuff that happens, but I don't think we've gotten to the point where we truly believe the whole thing was fake. Like the whole, like there's somebody totally not in there or somebody in there that totally should not be in there. Like it, like surprisingly so.
Well,
Because
we're moving toward that with the voting machines. That Trump has said, oh, Elon knows computers better than anybody, and then he's talking about, oh, these voting machines. They're Elon has said, oh, they're so easily, one line of code can do a lot. I mean, like I don't trust any computing system, and there's these like little drops of dissonance and little drops of questioning the validity of things, and they're things are being set up to, like, if one side wins, they're going to say, oh, this was rigged. If the other side wins, they're going to say, oh, they rigged it. There's all this finger pointing, all of this eroding of confidence is the where I see is scary, and there's the freedom of speech thing is part of this. They're allowed to say these things and have this start dialogues about things, but this is planned dissonance. This is like programming that's being applied to the things that we hear from both sides of government.
well, yeah, I mean, the other thing too would be, I'd say from the other side, if I was a Democrat, I would worry if I'm actually getting the candidates that I want. Because what was shown back when Hillary ran against Bernie was
Yeah.
completely suppressed in the primary. There were a bunch of there's from what I hear, he almost should have been the candidate that year, not Hillary. And there was all this backdoor stuff that kept him out of it. And then this past one, what primary did they have before they nominated Kamala? And all the stuff they hid about Biden and everything else. I mean, right now, both sides are not genuine and they are not being straightforward with any of the stuff that they're doing. So it's I mean, at least the Republicans have primaries. When Trump ran the first time, what, there were like 16 of those people on stage. Then like, oh, it was just Hillary and Bernie on the other side. There were no other Democrats that wanted to talk about things. And then I hear that Kamala's book is just like a tell all of, well, it wasn't my fault. And she like blames everybody else. So accountability is just ridiculous on both sides. Honestly, it's being ran by a bunch of children, and it's all about PR. You don't want to take. I don't know about you. I would have so much more respect for someone that came out and said, you know what, I kind of fucking blew it on that one. Like, let me try and make it better. At least that's holding yourself accountable that you're a person that makes mistakes. I believe that, but thinking that you make none, thinking that you never say something you probably shouldn't have, or that you never have to apologize. I mean, I think that
I don't think that people necessarily like that necessarily think that they don't make mistakes, but it's stiff upper lip. It's like maintaining appearances. A waiter at a fine dining restaurant is not going to fall on their sword and say, "Oh my God, I really messed up your order." They're gonna keep a level of decorum and say, I understand that there was an issue. I'm gonna look into this and make sure that this gets taken care of, even though they're the one that did it. You know,
yeah, but
they're
I don't feel like they even say the little bit that you're saying right now.
yeah.
When's the last time someone said that?
I mean,
I
that is the shifting of blame, though, that is a key part of it, is that acknowledging that a problem occurred, acknowledging that something went wrong. And I'm going to get to the bottom of it. That I'll use myself as an example. There are times that I drop the ball. I was supposed to call someone, I was supposed to send an email, I was supposed to send someone, a contract or something, and it'll be, a day or two past, and I'll go, oh no, I'm supposed to do that. Someone will reach back out to me and say, hey, any update on this? And I said, you know what, let me check in with that. And I have to get on my roller skates and backpedal a little bit. This, that you have to do that. That's just the way that things go. I don't think that that's a lack of accountability. I think that's decorum. I think that's being able to be adaptive and critically think. People forget things. Things fall through the cracks. That's it's a fact of life. Um, I think that in politics, everyone is worried about the next time they're going to run, or the next opportunity, and no one really wants to. No one can fall on their sword, because that would hurt their political aspirations and future.
Yeah. It's just, we're I think again, we're in a weird space, and again, I think that there's I think if the government ever came out and was massively infringing upon freedom of speech, that the millions of people that and again, it wouldn't just
Who?
right now, okay, the GOP's there and they're doing what they're doing, right? And it's gonna seem like it's like just the Democrats that are having a thing because it's that. But like I told you, like in our first episode, there are 33 million independents, just like me. So what happens when the middle ground of us start saying the same thing that the Democrats are saying, and now it's what 37 million registered Republicans versus 70 million Democrats and independents that have a problem with the GOP limiting our First Amendment or our freedom of speech. So it's just I still have some faith that the American system corrects itself, that people we still have a voice, we can still organize, and as long as our voting process stays legitimate, just like the wave that Trump had, where he won every swing state, won the popular, won everything else. Everybody can change their minds. That at any point we can vote the other way, and if it's a landslide, if it does, everything can change. I mean, the thing I'll bring up is, I saw a documentary on Iran. They were extremely forward thinking at one point. They had lost the traditional wear. They had that huge movie industry. The UK had a huge influence in Iran, but it seemed like they got really progressive really quick. And that conservative part of Iran just started saying, this is too much. And a wave of conservatism came. They voted in a real conservative person, and then everything changed. Iran took a step back. They got conservative, like militants and terrorism kind of things, and the whole world shifted in one voting cycle because they got a little too far one way, a little too quick for some people. So it's like that at any time, stuff can shift. And if it ever got that bad, people will vote. If it ever got that bad, they will. Even right now in California, the last voting cycle we have, most people look at California like, oh, dude, it's blue, right? There's just so overwhelming, Democrat and everything. Trump got a lot of votes, man. There were a lot of people. And that's impressive saying that more people have left California in the past handful of years than have come into California because of everything we have. So not only have we lost population in California, but the population we have has skirted more Republican recently. So it's even here, it can change. And it's like, and right now, they're trying to
Do
reach.
you really think that the population we have has shifted right, or do you think that the areas where the concentration of Republicans is now has more representation? Because the I feel like the the Central Valley, like the San Joaquin Valley, has I driving through to go to Fresno or go to Yosemite, like driving up the 5 and the 99. There's a lot of like Trump signs or anti Newsom kind of signs, and you don't see that on the coast. You don't get that, and the coast is where the population is condensed. I feel like there are less people with that then create more, like they have more representation. If there were a million people that lived in one area and now people have moved out of there, there's less people, but now that concentration of red in that less population, I don't feel like there's more Republicans now. I feel like they're overrepresented now. There are a lot of conservatives in California. There are, but there's overwhelmingly more blue at this point.
Well, and you know what? There always will be. I mean, basically, in any major city like that, and you can pick them, New York, Chicago, whatever else. And I would say this too, and anywhere that arguably needs more socialism, more social services, more taxes, more help for the
We
minority.
need more taxes.
Hell yeah. Well, again, it all comes in down to um, standard of living and minorities, not so much like racial terms, but even financial people and the lower aspect of being able to make money because they can't afford everything. So when you do stuff like that, again,
You think that we're a welfare state? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, we're the. How do you explain the amount of taxes that we have? All the taxes fund nothing but social services here. They just pulled money away from fire and safety and land clearing, so it's not environmental. Where do all of our taxes go? Homeless, welfare, unemployment, everything. Where do they go?
Okay.
And then I would say again, where we live, beach cities and everything else, there are a lot of Republicans over there too. They're not as loud spoken and everything else, but if you're going to tell me the people over there that have money don't want to try and keep more, that they're not more fiscally conservative, they are. They're not going to vote for more taxes for you to take more of their money. They're definitely not going to vote for higher property taxes on their mansions and houses and everything else that they've gotten. What's all of Orange County? What's all of Santa Ana? That has coastline, that has everything else. That's massively red. I have a bunch of people that moved out of the South Bay here into Riverside. Riverside is nothing but red over there. All you have to do is go a little bit east and it starts changing really quickly. I think the interesting too is that I think a lot of the movement away from California, some of it has been Republicans and conservatives because they're just tired of the Democratic state and all that other kind of stuff, so they left. But Toyota leaving was huge. Toyota going to Texas, that pulled a bunch of people, and then that big exodus we had going to Colorado. That's why Colorado is as blue as it is now because they had a huge exodus of Californians that went there.
Yeah.
So and then you have those states now, especially Texas, that are fighting back against this influx of Democratic people that they didn't have before, and they're worried about their land changing because now those people can vote. So I mean, I think that some of the Republican shift in California can also be attributed to the Democrats in California that might have been working in those companies that then had to leave. So some of the Democrats left in that work wave that left, and then some Republicans. But I think a lot of people also, I know me, the far progressive aspect of things, whether it be more taxes or, just the progressive social stuff or whatever else, it's pushed me a little bit to the conservative side because I think it's too much. I think it's too much and I think it's too quick. The whole thing about all nothing but electric cars in 2030, that is never going to happen. We don't have the infrastructure. You should hear what I talk to Edison people daily for all of our jobs. There is no way. There's no way it's possible. And we're losing refineries. He's got to fire up coal stuff again. They're starting to make refineries out in Bakersfield now that were never like oil. It's like it was a great idea, but you're going too far too quick, And it's just I again I think that you had a lot of outspoken stuff. You're having a lot of progressive things happening, and it's been like that for a while. If you look back to again, RFK Jr., Trump, Rogan, even Musk. What were they? They were all Democrats. Shit, they were all in California and they've all left. Why? That maybe they're tired of being overtaxed. Maybe the progressive got crazy when it came to the man and woman conversation and kids. Maybe it just all became too much and they're like, this is too wild and I want to keep more of my money or I want less government interference with my life. And you have to wonder where all this stuff goes, you know? So it's
Yeah.
just
I mean, I feel California's moving towards more self-sufficiency, though. I mean, like we are a net contributor to, in terms of taxes. We pay out more than we receive, and that is part of the high taxes. I mean, the cost of living, including the taxes that we pay, is high to live in California, and I think that, just like freedom of speech, if you don't like it, then that's great. Go find somewhere that you do like. I think that everybody should have the ability to find the right place for them. If you don't like the situation that you're in, get out of it. Figure it out. You know. I think that there are a lot of people, though, that can't make that choice, and the fact that there are billionaires and very, very wealthy people that have the mobility to do that, good for them. That's great. I'm glad, but it's almost impossible to amass $1 billion without exploitation being involved in it, or rigging of some sort, or like some backdoor boogie happening. And if California is not going to align with that type of activity, then go find somewhere that does. That's fine with me. I don't really mind paying a little bit more in taxes fund road roads being taken care of, or social services for mental health services for
High speed
the
rail.
yeah. I mean, there's like I think that the goal of
Of money that thing is putting in. Social services, sure. Homeless people, people that I can get on board with anything that makes sense, with anything that helps the society we live in and everything else.
yeah
But that stupid ass rail was doomed from from the start, and they're continuing to do it. Or the wildlife land bridge that just had to go over the freeway, and now animals are tracking in. They're saying, "Hey, keep your pets inside," because now all of a sudden there's mountain lions and stuff on the side of the road there didn't used to be, but we had to have that bridge, right? So I mean,
yeah. I can tell you that the land bridge is an interesting one, because having been in the sphere of like conservation, when I had dealings with like LA Waterkeeper and with like the Coastal Commission, and like everybody that's trying to save the ocean has a different agenda. And Bayona Creek is a really good example of that. There was a big group that's like, we need to save this species of animal. We need to save this bird. We need to save this toad or whatever. All of them have different goals, and a lot of times their goals don't align with one another. And so they all have the overarching, we need to save the environment, but they definitely don't care about the crane. This group doesn't care about this particular type of fish, or this particular type of invasive plant species. I mean, like there is so much infighting, even with just trying to have social services to fix things. The people that want the high speed rail, the people that want these land bridges, they have goals in mind. And I think that the land bridge is one that there was some person with the right, connection to pull, to tug on the ear of a politician that's like, hey, we need to if we do this, it's gonna be good for this particular species that comes in. One of the things that they probably didn't completely take into consideration is all of the other animals that are going to be brought in. And if that raises this rodent population, then we're going to have other predators that pop up. And like, there, you smack one whack-a-mole and two more come up. Like that, this is just the problem in life, is that you fix one thing and something else breaks. And I don't think, and we're such a big state, and there's so much money here, and everyone's trying to have, everyone has a cause. I just think that it's hard to play that game of, well, they did this and it didn't work, so we should just not, you know, we should just lower taxes and let the cards, fall where they will. That electrifying California for the cars is a goal. I'm in agreement with you. I don't think that it's going to happen, but it's a goal to push for innovation, and this trying to create infrastructure, and it's going to try to create jobs to try to get this infrastructure. And will it work? Maybe, probably not, but it might. Or things might happen that we figure out another path to using less fossil fuels. Is it likely? Probably not. But like you said, we're creating these refineries. We're becoming less uh reliant on oil outside of California. The more that we refine here, the more that we drill here. But then there's other environmental people that can say we shouldn't be drilling for oil. Like, everyone's always going to fight. We do have a state that is so large, and there's so many differing opinions. We're always going to be in this position. I don't.
Well, I even had, and it's all personal interest, right? What affects
Yeah,
me? What are things that I can see? Which
yeah.
is real selfish. I think you said something to me a while back about voting, right? And not necessarily voting for yourself, but I think you said like the
You have to vote for
most affected or
the mo
the least something. I
yeah,
can't remember exactly which.
the most vulnerable person in your life is who you need to
Okay.
your vote needs to
Yeah, and
align with.
I think when I vote, right? I mean, I look at certain things and I have my own perspective of life and stuff like that, and then I think of, well, you know, more than likely my life, I've set it up to a point where I'm not going to be overly affected one way or the other. Even right now, if you had to tell me, have I noticed my life change from Barack Obama to Trump to Biden and Trump? Not really. I do the same thing. I go to work. I do whatever else. I mean, nothing has changed. I don't talk differently. I don't walk differently. My city, everything, nothing around me has drastically changed at all.
You're a straight white male though. Why would it change? You
Well,
were
I'm
you were already at the top of the food chain.
well, which is fine. I'm speaking about my perspective. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. So, and I'm saying from the way that I vote and everything else, and then I try to take into account that not everybody has the same situation that I'm in. So, I try to be as cognizant of um, a voter as I can be, to where it's not just affecting me, but affecting society as a whole and my country as a whole, and things like that. Mm, But I remember talking to one person, and the whole taxes were coming up again about private roads and everything else, and they were like, "Well, all this money, it's not gonna go like down marine." I was like, "Well, what do you mean down marine?" "Well, that's my way to work." I'm like, "Are you voting for yourself?" I'm like, "Are you?" I was like, "I don't think they've ever said that the taxes are gonna do." I said, "The cities are individually required to maintain their roads and stuff like that. This is a state initiative that will need money, and the state will appropriate it as it's given." I think a lot of people too, like, "Oh, my tax dollars this." Once your tax dollars are taken, the government and the state can apply it in any way that they want. It's your money's gone. It is what it is. But you're allowed to vote up until that point where it goes and how it's used.
Well,
You don't like it's
you
going.
vote for the people that you think are going to spend your money in a way that aligns with your
Well,
beliefs.
yeah,
That's
boy.
You don't get to decide what happens with the money, but
No, yeah,
but
exactly.
you get to decide who has the money in their hand.
But she was very personally interested, like, in her taxes, and that they were not directly affecting her life in some way, and I was like, "I don't think that," I mean, I understand that you want everything you personally vote for to go to you, but I don't think government works that government will, again, address society as a whole, not you as an individual. So it's
Right.
hard to, you know, um Mm. But I would say massive tangent, right? So I mean, if we get back to the original thing, I don't know about if you have, right? So again, government's not going to infringe upon our speech unless it's the things we already know about. You go bomb an airplane, there's probably going to be a sheriff or something waiting for you because you're inciting anxiety and fear and all that other kind of stuff. Uh, but I don't know about you. I've never. When's the last time you fully read terms and conditions of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of those things you sign up for that have a code of limitations and things of stuff that you can say? And I think that people these days think that, because I'm sitting in my room in California and whatever else, and I post something, I can say whatever I want. And I'm pretty sure if you read the terms and conditions of that, it will probably say somewhere in there that if we deem one of your posts to be negative based on our standards, or inciting of violence or doing whatever else, we can restrict your speech.
So
And it's
people forget people forget that when a company gives you a service for free, that's not the product. You are the product. And the same way that if, Oscar Mayer put out a bunch of baloney that was turned out to be tainted or poisoned or bad in some way, they're gonna pull that product from their offerings, right? We are the product when we are on Facebook and on Instagram and all that stuff. We are the product. So if we are have gone bad, if we're poisoned in some way, that company is going to pull that product off the shelf. They're going to ban you. They're going to, restrict your access. They're going to moderate the message that you're putting out. I think the problem is that because it's so um subjective, that it's what their moderators deem hateful or inciting something negative. They're that quote of no one thinks that they're the bad guy. No one believes that they are evil. Someone could be spewing horrible, racist, horrible things online. They think that they're right. So when someone silences them, they can't believe that someone would block the truth the truth that they feel like they're saying. Everything is subjective to who's the one that's making the decision about what's appropriate and what's not. You know, there's that Supreme Court justice was blind, and they asked him about obscenity, and he goes, you know, I know it when I see it. He's blind. There was a whole case about pornography, and he goes, oh, it's obscene. Well, how do you know? Well, I know it when I see it. He's blind. He can't see anything. But it's all subjective. And these platforms have there's someone at the top. There's someone that's dictating the message, the like where the confines are of in that spectrum of free speech. And there is free-ish speech on these platforms to a point.
Yeah.
You have to stay within the lines. It's not as restrictive as bomb on a plane or fire in a theater. Like that. They make their own rules.
Well,
Sorry,
I've seen that trend.
you're not paying for it.
Yeah, I've seen that trend now where a lot of things and people will use that term unalived. And it's like, okay, they found out the algorithm was going to remove that post if you used a particular word. So they have that AI or that system that just vets all the wording and stuff that you say, but you find a way to say it without saying it.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, knowing the game and playing it. My big thing is I think we live in this false sense of whatever we're on or wherever we are, we can say what we want because we are protected by a certain guideline of things and everything else. And thinking that applies to other countries, like when we look at the restrictions other countries have on freedoms, and we're like, oh, well, that's not right. Well, like, yeah, like we have a freedom high horse that we're on, and we have our own problems. There are negatives that come from free speech. If you say something to somebody at a bar and that person doesn't like it and they smack you in the face, well, you just exercised your free speech and this person chose to respond that way. What did you say? So I mean, it's one of those things where you might have the freedom of speech, but it does not mean that it comes without consequences or without people that don't like what you say. You're responsible for what you say, but you're not exonerated from what you say in all aspects of stuff. That just means that, if the cops show up, oh, well, he called me this. I'm like, okay, well, we can't take him to jail for calling you something. That's not the, you know, and it's just, again, I think we fly loose with a lot of stuff that we can say because we know that we're okay. And it gives us that false sense of freedom in all aspects. And I was like, I think a lot of people need to read what your rights actually mean and who is responsible for restricting those things, and it's just, and then again, I think right now I don't know if it's actually happened yet or if it's happening right now, but I don't know if it's the GOP or if it's something like that, but back when like COVID was happening, you remember all those platforms, anyone that wasn't going along with like, oh, you need to mask and you need to get vaccinated and all this kind of stuff. Anyone that had something else in the ways of like masks don't really work the way that they're saying that they do. It didn't really come from a wet market. It probably came from like that lab
Lab leak. Yeah.
happened to be, doing research on that particular virus, and pretty much anything against, you know, the progressive left in the Biden administration. What they were saying was being removed. Again, the YouTube was removing and censoring a bunch of stuff, saying that it was misinformation and it was getting flagged left and right. Then we get down the road and we're like, oh, the mask that you were telling us to wear kind of did jack shit. Really didn't do that. The fact that we had to walk outside and be apart from everybody, it wasn't floating in the air like that. There was so much misinformation on the other side, and all those platforms were removing dissenting opinions. So and it's going to come down to stuff like that too, because I mean, that they're going to go after that because all these companies, if and I would say mainstream media in general, all your regular TV stations and then social media, Facebook, they're pretty left leaning. I mean, Fox News might be the one to the other way, but they're massively more left-leaning TV shows and the social media stuff than right. The right had to go and create their own social media because they felt the other
That's
ones were censoring and stuff.
but that is constantly changing. I mean, this whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, the
Oh, that lasted a couple years.
Tegna buying, like the companies all coming together and becoming these monopolistic media conglomerates is just a petri dish for the likelihood of one opinion being the disseminated to, being forced to everyone to align with that. We're getting to a point where news is not going to be, it can't be um, unbiased. It never will be again. The fact that we have Newsmax and One American News and Fox, and like that, we do Justin, have several very crazy far right leaning news channels,
Sure.
and the level of, so far right on the spectrum for some of these news stations is crazy. And I don't know of, any. I'm sure that there are. I'm not saying that there aren't, but I don't know of any insanely left
Oh,
leaning,
dude.
the news.
Throw the View on there, throw anything on NBC, MSNBC on there. There's just as I can't watch either one of those. It's like
Sure.
nauseatingly left over there. It's not
But
even,
what does that mean though?
and they
Nauseatingly
going and
left.
the same amount that you're saying to the right. It's the exact same thing. Whatever you feel about these right, and I feel the same thing about the right stuff too. I can't watch Fox News. I can't sit there and tolerate all that kind of shit either. So,
Yeah.
but again, to say that it does not exist, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. MSNBC, when's the last time they had a Republican on there? The View. When's the last time The View had anyone on there? And all they do is spew out the left side. That's all they do. And you know what? The View is on regular
MSNBC
program.
has Morning Joe. That's
Oh,
a
let's try
crazy
one.
conservative, huh?
MSNBC has been vomitingly left for the longest time. There was for the longest time it was Fox was right, MSNBC was left, and CNN was somewhere in the middle. And
Okay,
CNN was the only one for a while that would have a Democrat, a Republican, and then the moderator in the middle. There was the only one that would like mutually express all three at a time. And like no, MSNBC is just the land of Democrats and the progressive left. It always has been. And that shouldn't be news. That shouldn't be anything new. I put MSNBC in the same category as Fox, where they're left and they're right. The one thing I will say is that it's weird. Bill Maher says it all the time that Republicans always go on his show. Always. They will always show up. He never gets like brought down for any interviews to go on there. Democrats deny going on his show all the time. And it's like,
because Bill Maher's a fucking asshole.
nah, you know what? I don't think it's that. I think the Democrats are soft and they don't want to have the hard conversations. They're worried about Did you see the interview recently? I don't know her name. I think she's running for governor of California now. Walked out on an interview. She was getting pressured on questions and then just said that she didn't want to participate anymore and walked out because the questioning or whatever else was getting too difficult, or she thought it was leading her in a certain way or something like that. I think we get to this point where Democrats just don't want to have tough conversations where their lines and stuff and views are pushed, or where their people are not agreed with, where Republicans will sit there and argue with you and they'll have the conversation, and Democrats are just like, oh well, it's just not enough, I'll just leave.
Your that opinion, I think, is on the same level of me saying I don't know of any left leaning news. Like that's not like, to me, that's not true. I think that both sides don't want to talk about the way that things really are. They don't. Democrats don't want to admit that they're shiftless and, can't take a stand on anything. Republicans don't want to acknowledge the fact that they got that a good amount of them have, like, but both sides, they both have their heads up their asses, and they can't see things for what they really are. They're not acknowledging who's paying for them to say things. They can't acknowledge that they don't align with their constituents. Like that there are some very good politicians that are, have the pulse of the people that they represent. But most of them are doing stock trades before they vote on bills in Congress, and this is purely a financial ploy for them. It has nothing to do with being a good lawmaker. It doesn't have anything to do with the taking care of the people that they represent. It's self-interest. And if there is benefit for their constituents, great. Both sides are doing that. But to say that, oh, Republicans get on and they're willing to argue, they're also willing to lie through their fucking teeth and tell you that the sky's purple.
And
You
Democrats
know?
lied too, saying that Biden was healthy
Yeah,
and that Hillary was elected and be Bernie.
yeah.
So
Politics sucks. There's no two
I
ways
just
about it.
again I just you know what I it's
No
one of
one thinks that they're in the wrong. That's
yeah
that. I think that's what It
when they're
sounds like
all
you're.
wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all self-interested. And this is why we're all like we have one foot off the cliff right now. This like the we just need to leave this world behind.
Yeah. I think one of the questions I have. So we talked about prompts, right, or whatever else, and I think one of them should be, do you think there should be limits on speech, or that it should just be you can say whatever you want?
For in terms of free speech, like governments,
Well, I can see and draw the line that yeah, I mean the way that the right is written, it has to do with government.
if you want to stand on the
I
street
think
corner
it's just
and
determination
talk
of
shit,
social aspect, sure.
if you want to stand on the street corner and talk shit, great, do it. But if you're expecting to be platformed by a private company, you can't expect uncensored and unmoderated access to the masses. That's just not, like that. That's too much to ask. That's like saying, I'll invite you into my house, but when you start saying some fucking off the wall shit, like I can kick you out of my house. That's my right. That you're in my house. If I'm on Twitter, if I'm on Facebook, if I'm on Truth Social, if I'm on some platform that is not owned by the government, that is not a street corner, a public place, yeah, then you cannot expect that level of unmoderated access to a voice, to a platform. It's stupid to think that. And the people that are kicking and screaming about that, I'm being deplatformed. Great,
It's like, what did you say?
you know,
And then like right now, the
on
Republic.
both sides too. I think that the saying out of pocket shit, you're not protected.
Well, the whole thing right now too. Again, like the Republicans going after Kimmel and restriction of speech, free speech, and stuff like that. Cancel culture before that were Puritanism, or and Puritans and kind of the left. They were going after comedians for saying that wasn't. Right now, all the comedians moved to Texas because people have a sense of humor over there, and they don't get offended the way that everything was. All the comedy clubs in LA are like drowning and everything because of all the cancel culture that ensued. They try to cancel comedians for saying things, people that their whole job is to make a joke. And, now we're worried about the Republicans pushing back the other way, which I think is completely hypocritical because if you're a Republican that was worried about cancel culture and oh they're doing this, well then why are you doing the same thing? It's a constant tit for tat thing. But the cancel culture and everything else was started by progressives that were overly sensitive, that were worried about protecting people when it wasn't even about them. That wasn't Republicans that did that. They were restricting free speech back then because they didn't like what other people said. That oftentimes didn't even have anything to do with them. So again, that purest aspect of the progressives that we need to be always socially conscious and say all the right things, and if you don't, you shouldn't be talking. That's a freedom. That's withholding their freedom of speech just because you didn't like it. And that's in the social sense. That's not in the government because the government never went after any of those people. It was all social. It was social cancellation and everything else, which is people not liking other people's free speech. And that didn't happen in that way. All those comedians and everything, they all live in Texas. They all moved to Joe Rogan started his own comedy club and they all go down there because people have a sense of humor, realizing that when you go to a comedy event, they're going to tell a joke. You're not going there to listen to someone about life. You're going there to laugh and not take anything serious. That's the point. And progressive and liberals got their feelings up their ass about a comedian telling jokes. It's ridiculous. So again, it happens. It happens both ways. It's just you can't demonize all the Republicans for what they're doing when the Democrats did all the shit right before them. You know, I can see both, man. They both do.
Yeah. I'm gonna demonize the Republicans for taking away people's rights.
I'm gonna demonize the Democrats for being sissies, really, and killing comedy and everything else, and the matter of free speech, because it's not the latter that did that. And again, that's a social correction. That's not a government one. But it's just to say that it's not the same thing or whatever else. Like there's a bunch of people that get offended if it wasn't even about them. It's completely misappropriation. And that's fine. You just chased away all of the comedians. You just got everybody, and everybody else is doing fine. But it's just to say that, and I think we can say that it's worse because it's the government that is pushing back on now anyway, and that's the one territory we slide in where it comes to our rights, right? Where the government now is kind of meddling in that. But to say all the years of cancellation or
But
cancel culture that
the
ensued,
government's not
that
canceling
is
people.
not
Like
exotic.
the government's not canceling people. The government's not shutting down comedy clubs. These
Well,
are
no, but in the in the aspect of like Kimmel,
yeah.
you say that,
That is an attack on free speech.
yeah,
That has nothing to do with comedy. That is a literal free speech suppression. That's forcing a private company that again, they make the rules, the private company for their platform. That's the government forcing a private company to act. That's wrong. If people have a problem with a comedian and drive him out of town, okay. I don't agree with driving someone out of town, but if there were enough people and that person was affected by it enough to move, okay. Like that I if I mean, yeah, comedy is comedy. I think that people should be able to make jokes. But if there are enough people that are offended, then a shift, a compromise needs to be made. And if
yeah,
that
but I don't think
compromise is,
this
yeah,
is
I'm
this,
gonna go
this whole
somewhere where people like me. That's the
yeah.
same thing. If you're a fucking kid on the playground and some kids are saying that they don't like your red hair, go find someone that does like red hair. Like that, go. It's fine. That's okay. Someone can have a different opinion than you. They can not like something about you. Great. Like back to your sticks and stones comment. Like great. Why? Like why? What does it matter that comedians are so fragile that they have to find a safe space? They're doing the exact same thing that your woke left people are doing, trying to find safe spaces, and they're getting triggered. That comedians are getting triggered by not feeling like I can make a rape joke. Oh, not feeling like I can make a joke about, like traditional values. Like, okay, if I can figure it out, go pair. Deal with
Yeah,
it.
I don't think it was that, but you know, just a matter. I mean, there's certain jokes and stuff like that, sure, but the other thing being, again, I think it's I don't know. I think the context of the jokes and stuff was different, and the stuff
Sure.
that all these people are saying again, and it wasn't like, oh, we disagree, so go somewhere else. No, it was like, you should never be a comedian again. You should never be able to do that again. So this level of compromise, you'd say that there was, the left had no compromise. It was, you should be done. And I remember my mom even brings it up back in the day where you remember, I don't know if you remember, but when I was in school, they all of a sudden that zero tolerance policy came up for bullying and doing whatever else. Bullying was bad, but the zero tolerance policy meant that a kid made a mistake, said something mean, and he or she was done, gone, out of school and everything else. There wasn't talking about zero tolerance means zero tolerance. And I think that's what leaned into the cancel culture stuff. You said one bad thing, that means it's all. That's it forever. And there is no compromise in that. And it's like, why can't we talk about it? I said this thing, you didn't like it, okay. Let me give you context, or let me apologize in a tone, and let me
Sure.
keep going. There was never that aspect.
That's California. Uh,
That's a particular part of California. That's not
that's well,
California.
but that's like the California in general is litigious. Everyone's trying to sue everybody. Everyone's trying to shift and not accept. I don't like blame is the wrong word, but they lean towards dealing with something in an extreme way rather than the possibility. You say something, you're bullying someone, and that turns into a school shooting, or that turns into, like a violent act of either retaliation or just leveling up of the bullying. That I don't agree that one strike and you're out, but I do understand where schools and institutions are coming from, not not allowing there to be a second opportunity for violence or for escalation of some sort. I think that I think that's an overreach, but I get it. I can see the thought process there. I don't think that that's the right thing to do, but I get it.
Because I wonder where we're at as a society if all it took was one thing and then you were done with everything. As if people don't make mistakes or don't say the right thing all the time and all that kind of stuff. Where's the level of compassion, understanding that people are flawed and that stuff happens? And not only that, what did you just teach that one kid that made a mistake? Where's the growth for that one kid rather than you're done, we're kicked out? You don't think that that kid there's going to be more negativity from that? Or what did you do to try and remedy the situation? Or which kid needed help? The one that was picked on or the one that made the bad decision that needs to be taught there's better ways to do things? And I think just cutting it was never the right thing. And now we're into the again, someone said something you didn't like. Okay, well, you can choose to walk the other way, or you can choose to talk to that person and see if there's a common ground forward. But canceling them and going after their entire career and doing all that kind of stuff, that's not going to solve anything. It's not going to help. And I think it's just the pendulum swings too far these days.
But it's people's right of free speech to call for that person to be done.
Yeah, and it sucks because it's that other person's right to free speech to say those things in the first place.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
and
mean,
therein lies the issue. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been an interesting conversation. Feel like we can't. We I think feel like we came up and we didn't really come down. Um. Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Good corner to you, Justin.
good Corona, Jackson.